right, welcome back. Nice to see you. I got some hopefully interesting stuff for you today, mostly because your questions that you send me have been so good and so great. So thank you for sending those in. Send more of them, of course, pod@longtermwords.com. I want to start with a conversation about something that we talk about a lot, but probably don't talk about it enough. And there's a million different ways to parse it. And it's one of the most important topics with money, but there's no answer to it. It's always going to be an evolving thing that people need to figure out for themselves. And that's just the idea of money and happiness. And I saw this post go viral on Reddit a week ago. It exploded. It was all over the internet. And usually when that happens, it's because somebody said something that is simple, but people agree with. And I want to read it to you. The post says, I have a secret to share. After the first $2 or $3 million, a paid off home, and a good car, there is no difference in quality of life between you and Jeff Bezos. A cheeseburger is a cheeseburger, whether you are a billionaire or it is you. Money is nothing but a piece of paper or a number in your app. Real life is outdoors. Become financially independent. That's usually $2 or $3 million. Have good food. Enjoy the relations. Work out. Sleep well. Call your parents. That's all there is to life. The sooner you figure that out, the happier you will be. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good statement. I could, of course, push a little bit around the edges. Is there actually a difference in life between you and Jeff Bezos if you have $2 million? Well, he's flying private and he can have anyone over for dinner to have an interesting conversation with. There is, of course, things you can do with money that can give you a better life. What I do think can be true, though, is that the highest dividend that money pays is independence. And you can achieve independence probably in terms of living where you want, socializing with whom you want, retiring when you want, at a reasonable level of wealth. And the idea that the amount of money that you're going to need to maximize your happiness is a big, significant number, I think is a pretty serious misconception. And I will tell you, having spent quite a bit of time talking about money with very wealthy people, the thing that will stick out the most is not what money has done for them. It's what money has not done for them and cannot do for them. It's an astounding thing to watch. And I say this as somebody who wants more money myself and higher net worth myself. And I think I can use more money to have a better life for myself and my family. But it's astounding to watch what happens when you're not using it right or you're not using it for independence. And so the second thing that I want to share with you today, I want to bring in our first guest on the show, and that is the 37th President of the United States. Please welcome Richard Nixon to the show. Richard, what do you have to say about wealth and happiness?
You feel that, well, gee, isn't it just great to have enough money to afford to live in a very nice house and to be able to play golf and to have nice parties and to wear good clothes and shoes and suits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or travel if you want to? And the answer is, if you don't have those things, then they can mean a great deal to you. When you do have them, they mean nothing to you. To me, the unhappiest people of the world are those in the watering places, the international watering places like the south coast of France and Newport and Palm Springs and Palm Beach, going to parties every night, playing golf every afternoon, then bridge, drinking too much, talking too much, thinking too little, retired, no purpose. And so, while I know there are those who totally would disagree with this and say, gee, boy, if I could just be a millionaire, that would be the most wonderful thing. If I could just not have to work every day, if I could just be out fishing or hunting or playing golf or traveling, that'd be the most wonderful life in the world. They don't know life. Because what makes life mean something is purpose, a goal, the battle, the struggle.
I love that interview clip. It's from the Frost-Nixon interviews, which I think were not a great day for Nixon, but that was one of the very wise things he said during that interview process. And I think he's highlighting what I mentioned, that yes, money can do a lot for you. There's a lot it cannot do for you. And there's also a thing here in terms of retirement, when that is the moment that the vast majority of people will have a level of financial independence where they at least don't have to work anymore. And such a big question during that moment is, what are you going to do with your time? And some people do a very good job with that, at backfilling their schedule with hobbies and activities and friends and enjoying life. Other people don't. And as we talked about before, if you don't backfill your time with meaningful problems, it will backfill with petty, less meaningful problems. It's always the case. All right, let me get into your questions. This first one is from Sammy from Finland, who asks, I've built a meaningful amount of wealth entirely through my own efforts, but I don't really want to display it outwardly through spending or status symbols. At the same time, I do feel proud of what I've achieved, and sometimes I feel a desire to share that success. For example, with my friends or parents. What makes it complicated is that it feels awkward or even a little bit silly by starting a conversation talking about how much wealth I've accumulated, even though part of me would like the achievement to be seen or acknowledged in some way. How do you think someone should handle that feeling of pride and the desire for recognition in a healthy way? Sammy, the first thing I would say is that the only thing people care about is how you make them feel. People don't care anything else about you other than how your actions make them feel about themselves. Kind of a stark statement, I think, but I think that is broadly true. And there are different ways to talk about your money in ways that are going to leave people feeling much worse off or better off about themselves. And I think if we talk about the topic of wealth inequality, which is effectively what this is. Now, at the whole economy level, we're talking about centibillionaires, trillionaires now versus ordinary people. But that's effectively what you're talking about. How do you deal with the social issue of wealth inequality? A theory that I have, and it's nothing more than that, is that most people have no issue with wealth inequality per se. What they have an issue with is people accumulating money through ways that they didn't feel was earned or deserved. And I'll give you an example of this. Who does society appreciate and respect more? A hedge fund billionaire who made his money shorting the housing market, or the billionaire Taylor Swift? Who do we appreciate more? And it's such an obvious answer who that would be, because it's easy to create a narrative that one of them made their money through a terrible way and other one made their money entertaining us and making everyone happy. You see this a lot with athletes as well. Athletes who make tens, hundreds of millions of dollars per year when you factor in their endorsement money. And people by and large love them. There's not the same kind of pushback of wealth inequality against them that there would be a CEO, let's say. So I think people love when you can make a ton of money and even display a ton of money if they think you deserved it through doing something exceptional. The reason I bring this up is because when you are with peers, and let's say you have the same job as they do, or similar jobs and similar educations, and you consider yourself peers, but you have much more money because you've made better decisions in life, if that's the case, the other person is probably going to feel very bad about themselves. It's one thing if I look at LeBron James and say, he's got a mansion and a private jet. He's LeBron James. I'm not. I have no jealousy of that. But if I were to have a peer who is just like me with the same job, but he is saved and invested better and has a bigger house and what looks like a better life, then I feel bad about myself. Most of the time, that's going to be the case. And so for a lot of people, I think it comes down to, don't necessarily be proud of how much money you have. Be proud of what you've created and how you've done it and what you've done. And I think gaining your respect and your admiration from that is a much healthier way to go about it. Now, if you have earned that money over time because you are an exceptionally good doctor, lawyer, entrepreneur, whatever it might be, people will respect you for that. And they will have no problem, by and large, with you accumulating money from that over time. But you need to gain your respect from that, from what you've done, not necessarily just the fact that you have more money than they do. There's this great essay published this week that I really enjoyed. I'm going to leave it in the show notes for this. And it was talking about a documentary about Jerry Seinfeld. And the documentary is profiling Jerry Seinfeld when he was a mega superstar comedian and an upcoming comedian named Orny Adams. And there's a scene in the documentary, this is what the essay was about, where Orny Adams is like, I haven't made it yet. I need to make more money. All of my friends on Wall Street have made a lot of money and I haven't made it yet. And Jerry Seinfeld is sitting next to him being like, what in the world are you talking about? Making more money? Like people on Wall Street, like you're a comedian. What are you even talking about? And the point that the essay made that I thought was really good was if you're really good at your job and you enjoy the craft and you're so talented at what you do, the money will eventually come. The people who are trying to force it and do it just for the money and the money is a sole focus tend to just drive themselves crazy. And so putting some of this together, I would, be very careful at using your money, showing your money as a way, even if it's not intended, to show your peers that you made better decisions than them over time. That's almost never going to go well. And if you want to be proud and express your pride in something, be proud of how you made that money, not necessarily the money itself. All right, next question from Shinny. Does greed and desire solely drive the world economy, or are there other factors? I love this question. I love questions like these. And I can think of several other factors that play an enormous role in the global economy. I want to list them off for you. Envy, boredom, self-interest, and pride. All right, next question. This one is from Fine, who says, where do you stand on minimalism? The first time I heard of it was the documentary on Netflix, but the second more recent time was from Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. They didn't use the words minimalism, but they preach about less is more and owning less is the ultimate luxury. They say that when you are buying or acquiring anything, you're not paying just a dollar price, you're paying a portion of your life. Since finding this, I've decluttered many things and I've never been happier with owning less. Where do you stand on all of this? Wonderful observation. And I'll tell you about my kind of personal life. My wife and I went through a period probably in our mid or late 20s when I don't know if we would have used the word minimalism, but it was a frugal stretch. And we didn't feel like we were withholding anything that we wanted and that would have made us happier. It was almost the opposite. It was a similar thing of the more we get rid of, the fewer possessions that we have, the happier we're going to be. I don't know if we practice that anymore. We have kids, and so we have tons of stuff floating around the house. And I like nice things. I like really cool things. But what I would say is, there's that saying, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And so if you are obsessed with minimalism in terms of, I can't wait to get rid of all this stuff, what you're actually doing is focusing on the stuff. And therefore, it is still controlling your identity and your personality. The people who I think are the most calm with what they do and the happiest with what they have are people who are just totally at peace with what they have. They're not they don't wake up every morning walking around the house saying, we need to get rid of this rug and get rid of these dishes and whatnot. They're just totally at peace with what they have. And you can probably see this irony of, you could have someone who might look like a hoarder, but is totally at peace with what they have. And someone who lives in a very Spartan house, but is obsessed with trying to get rid of more. Which one of those people is in a healthier mindset? Like, it's pretty obvious. I think you also have to be careful about the people who preach minimalism, even if they're not using that word. But actually, if you dig into their life, it's very different. You brought up Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. They might live, at least Buffett, who's still with us, more Spartan lives than your typical billionaire. But let's be honest, Warren Buffett has a private jet. For most of his house, he had a vacation house on the beach in Laguna Beach. His main house that he bought in his 20s, which people bring that up a lot, is living in the same house his whole life, is almost 7,000 square feet. Let's not pretend like he's living like a pauper. He is not. The most interesting example of this is from the biography of Harvey Firestone, the tire magnate. And he wrote his biography, I think, in 1926. I think it was exactly 100 years ago. And he talks about what happened when he and his friends got rich and the big material life that they suddenly acquired. And here's what he wrote. He's talking about what happened when he got rich and the simple life that he used to have. He's reminiscing, and he said, I used to pay $25 a month for a little house. Our grocery bill hardly averaged $5 a week. Sometimes it seems that it might be better to go back to those simpler days, that one might get more out of a less complex life. He's like daydreaming about the simplicity that he used to have that he doesn't anymore. And so then the question is, why don't you go back to that simple life? If you wanted it, why don't you go back? And he has an answer. He says, one changes with prosperity. We all think we should like to lead the simple life. And then we find out that we have picked up 1,000 little habits, which we are quite unconscious of because they are part of our very being. There is no going back except as a broken man. which I think that is like one of the most fascinating lines. There's no going back except as a broken man. So like as he got rich, he picked up more stuff, more habits, and he can't get rid of them because they became part of his identity. He then talks about what every rich person does as soon as they get rich, which is buying or building a gigantic house. And here's what he had to say. He says, "Why is it that a man, just as soon as he gets enough money, builds a house much bigger than he needs? I have a house in Akron many times larger than I have the least use for. I have another house in Miami Beach, which is also much larger than I need. I suppose that before I die, I shall buy or build other houses, which are also larger than I need. I don't know why I do it. The houses are only a burden. But I have done it, and all of my friends who have acquired wealth have big houses. I wonder why it is. Perhaps it is some foolish survival of the ancient feudal idea when a big house meant a strong house in which one might keep a small army for protection. But in most cases, and especially with men who have earned their own money, the house is just built. And when it is done, no one quite knows why it ever started." It's an astounding thing of like the urge to have a bigger house and better things and nicer things almost goes unquestioned. But when you actually become introspective about it and people ask, why do I even have this? And by the way, I may have even been happier with the simple life. That's really the thing. The thing about a simple life is that I think it's one of the only ways in which you can control your money versus money controlling you, in which you have full control over what you're buying and how you're spending the time versus the money saying, hey, now that you have money, you should buy more stuff and more clothes and take better vacations. Maybe that is your identity. Maybe it's just the money whispering in your ear of what it wants you to do versus you using it for your own good. And I think the point of all that is that it's very easy to underestimate the cost of your purchases. You know the price of your purchases, but the cost that it's going to have on your well-being and the upkeep of certain things, particularly houses, cars, whatever they might be, is very difficult to calculate. And sometimes you only learn through experience of watching other people and understanding what's actually made you happy before you understand how those things really work. All right, last question. This one's from Akandu, who says, if financial literacy successfully teaches an entire generation to become disciplined, long-term index investors, does the paradox of efficiency kick in? Does a strategy rooted in exploiting other people's impatience and mistakes stop working if everyone finally learns to stop making those mistakes? A very good question. And let me answer it like this. Two things are going to happen in 2026. One is that humans will produce AI bots that can generate the most advanced scientific knowledge practically known to man. And some of those same humans will bet $1 trillion on sporting events. And I bring that up because the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it, between being a smart society and making very smart decisions, can be 100 miles wide. I don't think anyone ever in our lifetimes or our predecessors' lifetimes need to worry about living in a world in which people stop making financial mistakes. I don't think it will ever happen because what is causing people to make financial mistakes is not lack of information, lack of education. It's their own psychology, which for people as a whole is rooted in who knows how many years of evolution that taught them to react to greed and fear and uncertainty in a certain way. And that will never go away. As long as there is opportunity to be made, as long as there is profits to be made, as long as there is a social comparison of how other people are investing and the money that they are making, people are going to respond to that in crazy ways. You can always be assured of that. I mean, how long have we been learning about politics, health, learning about these topics and still making very terrible decisions along the way? I think that will always happen. Now, is it likely that more people will be invested in index funds 50 years from now than are today? Yes, almost certainly. I think so. But you don't need that many people making terrible decisions for the market to be inefficient. To set the price and responding against that will always be the case. And the number of people who invest in index funds that watch other hot stocks and other hot sectors outperform them and say, no more index funds, we're going to start chasing this. The FOMO that goes along with this, that will never go away as well. You never have to worry about living in a world in which no one makes bad decisions anymore. You can be assured of that. What are the three assurances? Death, taxes, and living in a world where people make terrible financial mistakes because they're watching other people do better than them. All right, and finally, I want to leave you with a book recommendation. I love this idea that the history that's played out, even in your own life or throughout the rest of the world, is but one version of what could have happened among infinite possibilities. And so it's so interesting to ask in your own life, what if things would have gone differently? What if I had made this decision instead of that decision? Would I have been better or worse off today? I'll tell you this thing I did about a year ago that blew my mind, and it was like one of the most interesting things I've done with AI. I went to ChatGPT and I fed it a bunch of accurate biographical information about me through age 20. Here's who Morgan is, here's where he grew up, here's who his friends were, this is what the hobbies that he did, accurate through age 20. And then I said, write a fictional story about what happened in Morgan's life in the next 20 years. And it was astounding to read and to look at all of these stories that could have so easily played out and could have been true within my own life. Some of them were really nice. Some of them were not so nice, of different paths my life could have taken. Becoming more aware of what your life could have been and what the whole country could have been, what the whole world could have been, not this version of events that we know in history, but what would have happened if you made a slightly different decision at some point in your life, was so interesting. And so my recommendation to you would be to do just that sometime. Go into Claude or ChatGPT, give it some accurate biographical information about yourself, and then ask it to make a realistic story about what could have happened next. You might be pleased with some of the outcomes. You might be scared with some of the outcomes. Some of the stories are sad. Some of them were funny. But it gives you more humility, I think, for the path that we're all on and how differently it could turn out. That's it for this week. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.